What's up, guys? Welcome to the internet's most comprehensive 75 hard recap video. So I just wrapped up Andy Frisella's 75 hard challenge a week ago today and have taken some time to compile my notes, 2 pages worth for you guys. I want to be extra thorough and run through all the tools, tips, tricks, tactics, and most importantly, my key takeaways from having completed the challenge. Those of you who don't know, Andy Frisella is a entrepreneur, speaker, podcaster. He has been grinding out a business for roughly 20 years. So he's an overnight success, 20 years in the making. He'll often tell the story of his supplement company sleeping in the back of his store as he got started. He and his brother have gone on to build multi-9-figure, I would imagine by now, business. So he's got his first Phorm supplement company. He's also got his MFCEO podcast and his Real AF podcast. And he's just a badass dude who has been in the game a long time and realized that he needed to strengthen his resolve and his mental toughness, and as a result created this challenge that a whole handful of people have since gone on to do and take on alongside him. And so what I'm most impressed by about him is just his authenticity and the fact that he has absolutely no qualms with telling it how it is. He is very true to himself. So above and beyond what he's accomplished as an entrepreneur, what he does to serve and lead others is really what most speaks to me about him. And so anyway, if you're here watching this video, chances are you already know who he is. And you probably already know what the challenge is, but I'll just quickly outline it. And so there's essentially 5 components. Andy has made it abundantly clear that this is not a physical fitness challenge. It is a mental toughness challenge. And as I went through it, I came to realize that is very much the case. So it's a progress picture each day. It's consume 1 gallon of water daily, read 10 pages of nonfiction, self-help, personal development, something along those lines each day. 2 45-minute workouts each day. 1 has to be outside, and adhere to some diet, some sort of diet of your choosing, whatever best serves you and your physical goals, and exclusive of any cheat meals and booze. And so as we go through this, and I'll outline what I chose to do and why with regard to my diet piece, and that one's going to be very different for everybody else. The others are a lot more straightforward, but that one component. So again, there's these 5 components, and if you're here and watching this video, you probably already knew that. So I'll just kind of run into this. And so why would anybody do that stuff, right? What would prompt someone to undertake this challenge? Well, for me, there's 3 components. I sensed, like Andy, that I was getting soft and that I was, my resolve needed to be strengthened. My mental toughness was fading. At the time of this recording, we're in quarantine, where it's COVID, it's 2020. A lot of people are stuck at home, and in doing so, the diet starts to go away. The gyms have been closed, so frequency with which people are working out has fallen off. For me, those things were all very much the case. And so I felt like the time was right for me to step into this challenge. Another reason I decided to take on the challenge was just overall, I was incredibly inconsistent with my routines, rituals, habits. I had come to let myself go with regard to getting up on time and doing the things I was supposed to do when I was supposed to do them. I was being inconsistent in my word and consistent in my actions. So I said, what better time than now to really hone in and get habitual about those rituals and routines. And then finally, I just found myself negotiating with myself a lot. It was just a lack of discipline. So there was way too many times where I said I was going to do something, and for whatever reason, I'd make up whatever reason. I wouldn't do the thing I said I was going to do when I said I was going to do it. And so I really wanted to get a handle on that and just stop negotiating with myself, make a commitment to do a thing, and then see the thing through. And that really is the heart of this challenge. And as I kind of go through this, I think you'll see how that all plays out. And so that's why I did it. And here's what I found in doing it. So I'll kind of take each one of the components and talk through it, and then the tools, tips, tricks, tactics that I used to tackle each one of the components. And hopefully you guys find value in that, and it serves you if you choose to undertake this challenge. So with regard to a progress picture, so a lot of people wind up having gotten tapped out of the challenge because they forget to take the picture every day. So for me, taking the picture wasn't necessarily like a monitoring tool. I know that some folks like to look at the picture and to see the progress, and they check the scale every day. Well, for me, it was the complete opposite. I actually didn't look at any pictures until the end. I just simply did them and I checked that box. I don't particularly care. In fact, I didn't like what I looked like at the beginning, so what the hell sense did it make to be looking at pictures in the mirror every day? I would simply take the picture, store it, make sure I check the box, and then in the end, when you see the pictures side by side, is when you really see the fruits of your labors. But so I would do it first thing in the morning. There's a couple of pictures, and I'll probably throw them up on this video, of me taking the picture in the morning, eyes still closed, shorts on backwards. I would literally just roll out of bed, walk over to the mirror, shoot the picture, done. Actually had a tracker also, which I'll post a picture of here as well, that had every day of the 75 days, and I would cross them off as I would do them. So it was a reminder, but also a way to kind of gamify it and see progress as I was going. Beyond the morning picture, trying to get that done and just be like, check that box and move on. If for whatever reason I didn't get it, if I was abruptly woken up and those first 5 minutes of my morning weren't habitual, in the sense that I would just be able to routinely walk over to the mirror, which you would think is pretty straightforward, but for whatever reason, there were a few times that didn't happen. I had backed up a reminder later in the day to make sure that I took the picture. And so there were a couple of times where that reminder wound up saving me, especially at the beginning. As you get further along in the process, these routines get tighter and you don't necessarily have to worry about that as much, but early on that was important. So I would say then to set an alarm is a great trick. First thing in the morning, my alarm's set for 4:55. I'm up. 5:05, I have a secondary alarm to make sure I've already taken my picture and consumed the water as I'm about to sit down and read. So I have that alarm, and then again before bed, I've got another alarm that basically would come on and just remind me of all the things that I needed to do that day. And most times I would just look at it and the things were done, so I didn't necessarily need it, but a couple of times it saved me, and I did need to go take a picture or finish my reading or whatever the case was. So I would say be strategic about that, and then just make that one about checking a box. You really don't want to be burdened with that as you go into the harder stuff. So with regard to drinking the water, so there's a whole bunch of different stuff online about this, and everybody's got a different strategy and what does or doesn't work for them. I'll just give you my experience and what worked for me, and then from that you can choose to adjust accordingly. So I subscribe to the concept of hyperhydration first thing in the morning. So I would, like I said, first thing, take the picture and then immediately beeline for the water. And so this is how I managed to do it. 4 liters, 1 liter bottles. It was manageable, it was trackable. My goal was to slug half this bottle first thing out of the gate. So the first thing I'd do each morning was consume 16 ounces of water, hyperhydrate, get the body going, wake the organs up. I found that at first it was a little bit challenging, but over time the body adjusts. So take a few deep breaths and then just pound the water. Don't put it down until you've taken 10, 12 slugs from the bottle, and that'll get you to about 16 ounces. and now you're an eighth of the way there. So first thing in the morning, take a sip as I'm doing this. This is very much a habit that has stuck with me, and I suspect will for a very long time. So with regard to the water, a couple of tricks that might make sense for folks that don't like water. Like, I know a lot of people have an issue with just drinking plain water. Squeeze some lemon in there or get powdered aminos, and that would add some flavor to the water, and it's a way to kind of game it. I don't know that that's like a variation to the thing, and whether or not that's acceptable, who knows, but like, you need to get water, and so long as you're getting a gallon of it, who cares if it's got some lemon in it? So just pound the water in the morning. Like I said, figure out a way to strategically lay it out throughout the course of the day. I was watching some recap videos early on of people who weren't getting any of their water in till 1 or 2, and around lunchtime they were already starting to feel dehydrated. The headaches were setting in, and then they were playing catch up the balance of the day, trying to put down a gallon of water in those last 6 to 8 hours before bed, which ultimately sucks because then it's got you waking up in the middle of the night, so it's ruining your sleep cycle. So I would say do smaller servings, break them out throughout the day. Another good trick for me with regard to these bottles, because I chose to do 4 1-liter bottles, and towards the end I was well over 1.5 gallons and probably closer to 2 gallons. But at that point I decided to be socially conscious and stop wasting single-use plastics. But at first, this is what I needed to do strategically to get myself into the habit of doing it. So it was 4 bottles at first, and within the first couple of days, you're peeing like crazy, your body's adjusting. Within the first week, you're regulating a lot better. For me, probably within the first month, I came away from doing the 4 one-off bottles and started going with the gallons. Just felt like that was a lot easier for me. And then it was just, I need to get to the bottom of this gallon, and once that's done, I'm done for the day. So I'll leave you guys with one last tip on the water piece. If you are gonna do smaller bottles, what I found is that every time you drink a bottle, rather than just finish the bottle that you've got there and say, okay, that's done, take a sip of the next bottle. And whatever you're refilling, if you're doing refillable containers, whatever the case is, don't just finish what you've got and then go back to whatever it was that you're doing. Break into the next serving. So I would finish this bottle, get to the bottom, and then I would open the next one and slug from that one as well. And so it was just a mental thing, and I found that if I didn't, then the next time I picked up water would be a lot longer. But if I would finish the bottle before it, take a sip of the next bottle, it almost kept it going. So silly little thing, but I found that it worked for me, and so I'll share that with you guys. And like I said, the habit of drinking the water was probably one of the biggest game changers for me and has stuck with me, and I intend to keep that one going indefinitely. So with regard to reading, so the 10 pages of nonfiction, self-help, personal development, I'm a voracious reader to begin with, and I easily consume 10 pages a day before the challenge. What I found is that I got lulled to sleep by believing that I had that part figured out and not being systematic about how I did it, because in the past I wasn't. It was whenever I felt compelled to read, I would read, sometimes in the morning, sometimes the evening, sometimes throughout the day. And within 5 days of starting the challenge, I actually had to restart because I forgot to read. The one thing I didn't get strategic about was the one thing that actually caught me off guard and forced me to start over. So I realized that if I am going to do this, even the thing that I do pretty religiously, I need to realize that I might miss if I don't put a plan in place for it. And so I did. And what I found is that if I read those 10 pages first thing in the morning and get them out of the way, I don't necessarily need to worry throughout the day. So that's really good, obviously. But I tend to study books more so than read books. And so when you're studying a book, you're going to spend a significant amount of time on an individual page. So getting through 10 pages will take a lot longer than if you're just simply reading whatever it is. So what I found is that I had 2 different approaches. If I were reading in the morning, I would essentially be reading something that I was studying, taking notes on, highlighting, marking up. If for whatever reason my morning was shifted and I couldn't get to my reading early on, in the evening, if I was fried after a long day, it's unlikely that I'm going to have the the wherewithal to sit down and study a book at that level. So what made sense for me was to take simple, some easy reads and stack them on the nightstand. And so things that you can get through 10 pages of in a short amount of time are really good backups. And so you just stack them on the nightstand, put them in a couple of different places. Even one on your person would make sense if you're on the move a lot throughout the day. And then you can still check that box. So for me, ideally, I want to be reading stuff and really internalizing it and studying it and marking it up. But for the purposes of the challenge, to not get stopped out and have to restart, I said, you know what, on the days that I don't get to do that for whatever reason, at night, when the reminder kicks on, I say, hey, listen, I've got an hour or so before bed. Let me get to something that I can process quickly, something that I can read that's an easy read. And so those books will be different for everybody. I like the 4 Agreements was one that I kept on the nightstand throughout this process. You guys can check that one out. Easy read, and if it saves you 4, 5, 6 times throughout the course of this challenge, it's well worth it to have that. And it's actually a really great book anyway. So I would say on that, just again, the alarm, same strategy as the water on this, with the exception of the fact that you can have 2 different approaches to how you read. And so that'll be personal for each person. So take that and do with it what you will. That's what worked for me. Again, this is all my experience. And so I hope that you find value in what I was able to do and how I worked through these things. And if they serve you, take from them what does and use it in your challenge. And if it doesn't, you leave it behind. Some of these things are going to resonate with folks and others aren't. And I understand that. And so now like the real meat of this stuff. So with regard to the picture, the water, and the reading, I feel like those for me were really a lot of like checking boxes and just making sure that I didn't miss on them. The ones that really required some additional effort. Not that any of this stuff is easy, but those 3 things easier than these 2. So the workout and the diet. So with regard to working out, I had gone from not working out at all to the challenge. So there was no runway here. It was just the day before I started the challenge, I hadn't worked out in months. And the day of the challenge, I started doing 2 45-minute workouts. Excuse me. And then those 45-minute workouts compound over time, especially when you're coming in cold. So if you're already doing something and working out, you'll be in a better spot. So I'd say first and foremost, get the first workout in as early as possible. Try and bang out a workout in your morning routine, whatever that looks like for you. For me, when I got it in the morning, it would be between 6 and 7. It was great to have the peace of mind, and if it was outside, even better. If the weather was with me early in the morning, I'd head out and get the workout in. If not, I would ride. I've got a Peloton. Those of you that have a bike, the bike's an awesome option for those rainy mornings or late at night if you need to get in an indoor workout. So I would say don't wait. Another thing is do not wait till afternoon to try and stack your 2 workouts. There were a couple of days, more than a couple of days, where I didn't get my workouts in early in the morning. By the time noon, 1 o'clock comes around, the pressure starts to build and you realize that now you're gonna be on the hook for 2 workouts later in the afternoon or evening. One of them will likely be just before bed or after dinner. And so the whole time you're building this pressure and this undue anxiety. So for me, getting the workout in early in the morning took that pressure off, and then knowing that later on, ideally if it was an outdoor workout, later on I had my backup workout, which is always a 45-minute ride on the bike. I could always do that at any time in the house to close out the day. So a couple of stories that might help kind of paint a picture for you guys with regard to the workouts. And a lot of these recap videos you see online, you'll hear people talk about running in the rain. Well, most of the time what happened was, like I said, I did, right? They didn't get the workouts in early enough. And next thing you know, it's pushing towards the end of the day. And the only option is a run at the end of the day. And if it's raining, it's raining. Like there really wasn't much you could do about that. And so I'd say I got caught in the rain doing my outdoor workout maybe 4 or 5 times. I would do my outdoor workouts with a weighted vest on. So I looked especially suspicious running around suburbia with a weighted vest in the dark while it's raining. So, and was stopped by the cops twice throughout the course of this challenge for that very thing. So I would say be conscious of that, and again, just force yourself to get out and get that first workout in early. So another story with regard to the working out and tying back to the reason I even did any of this in the first place was that I found myself negotiating with myself a lot. And that was a sign of lack of discipline and just inconsistency in my word. Again, if you read the 4 agreements, the book I suggested that you make part of your challenge and put it on your nightstand, the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And so I found that I was breaking my promises to myself, and it's what prompted me to take the challenge on in the first place. And on day 25, I was in the house having gotten in one workout, owing an outdoor workout at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night as it's raining, and thinking to myself, nobody cares, like who's even paying attention to the fact that you're doing this? And then I caught myself saying nobody would know if you didn't go out and get this workout in. And the second I said that is when I popped up and realized I have to go out now, like right now. If I'm willing to lie to myself about whether or not I'm gonna do the workouts because nobody's watching, that whole integrity thing goes out the window, and this whole challenge is for naught. And so on day 25, there was a massive shift for me, and it became about just the drive and the discipline to see this thing through, and the understanding that you're not doing it for anybody but yourself. Nobody cares that you're doing this challenge. I'll just be upfront about that with you. When it's done, some might ask, and some might watch videos like this because they want to understand and they want to hear about our recap, and maybe they feel compelled to do the challenge. But I promise you that if you're doing this for anyone other than yourself, if you're saying things like, I think I want to do this and I'm going to try this, don't do it, because you won't make it. You just absolutely won't make it all the way through. The stick-to-itiveness that's required has to come from within, and so that was a turning point for me. A third of the way through at day 25, I remember vividly having that conversation with myself, forcing myself to go out, get the workout in, and from that point forward, the momentum just builds. And from a third of the way through to halfway through to 2/3 of the way through, those little milestones started coming really quickly. So just wanted to share that anecdote with you because it may serve you, and if your mindset, if you're wired such, like this might be something that'll resonate with you, and if it happens to you during the challenge, you'll realize why. And so that's what I could tell you with regard to working out. One other thing I would say, and I'll kind of touch on it later when I talk about what did I learn and what would I have done differently, but diversify the workouts, and I'll kind of expand on that a little bit further down the line. But so, and the final component, the diet piece. And again, this thing about the diet's going to be different for everybody. What you choose to do from a diet standpoint is completely up to you and what your health and wellness goals are. For me, coming off of a dry Lent, I had kicked booze and meat for all of Lent leading up to the start of the challenge. So for 40 days, my body was craving the sugars that it would have otherwise gotten from alcohol. And I was never really a sweet tooth guy, but I found myself craving all kinds of sugars at all kinds of hours. And so part of my diet was no processed or refined sugars. That was it. I just made it a non-negotiable, which I came to find out was a lot harder than one might think, because sugar is in literally anything that's packaged is loaded with sugar and sodium. And throughout the course of this challenge, I also came to find out that labeling standards are constantly changing, and how things were labeled when I started the challenge and how the same product is labeled at the end of the challenge is different over the course of 75 days. Things that I thought were good to eat, protein bars and vegan bites and certain types of cacao, those things were labeled one way, and then by the end of the challenge labeled differently. So it's important that depending on what your dietary challenge is, what you choose to adopt as a diet, that you read the labels. But again, like everything else, this more so than anything else, I would say the strategy, the plan, the approach to how you're going to handle the diet piece is critically important. Sundays, prepping for the week, huge. I think that, and again, I'll talk about this when I get into what did I learn and what would I have done differently. But being conscious of the fact that like life will be happening through this in parallel with this challenge. This challenge can't become your life, and it won't. It'll be a part of it. And as even for those of us that were in quarantine, and those of you that are still in quarantine, and you might not have the routine that you ordinarily would have earlier in the year with work, just there's things going on, and then you're trying to do this in parallel, with those things. So how do you work your diet, work your meals into life? Like you can't be dependent on eating out the whole time. Depending on what you choose, maybe you could order Purple Carrot or Blue Apron or some sort of like meal prep program and have some of your meals predetermined for you. I would say think on that and then be strategic about how you approach that going into each week, specifically on Sundays, and laying out what your week's going to look like. And I got a couple of things I would have done differently, like I said, and I'll talk on that. One last thing I would say with regard to the no booze and no cheat meals, those components of the diet piece have to just simply be non-negotiables. The thinking through whether or not a sip or like a beer, or is that like a vodka because it doesn't have sugar, whatever like types of beverages you're tempted to consume, are those things okay or not okay? Like it's just wasted bandwidth. The no booze and the no cheat meals have to just absolutely be non-negotiables, things that you don't even talk or think on throughout this challenge. Because if you do wind up going out, fortunately throughout this challenge, I wasn't really out much. So I wasn't being tempted while out with peer pressure to eat this or drink that. I know a lot of people who have struggled with the challenge find themselves at barbecues or out for dinners or whatever the case is. And as they're trying to work within the dietary restrictions that they set for themselves as part of the challenge, friends are peer pressuring them to like, what's one beer? What's like one piece of bread? Like, what are you doing with this challenge? Why even bother? And so if you just make it an absolute non-negotiable and you don't dialogue around it, it just is not a thing. It'll save you a lot of bandwidth, and it'll definitely put you in a better spot to not have to worry about being tempted or having other people coax you into doing something that you don't want to do and take you off track. So now transitioning out of those 5 components and like those tools and tips and tricks, and now into what I would have done differently and what I learned. I think my strategy around water, the picture, and the reading, once I figured out the reading and had to start over, was super solid. And I don't know that I would have changed a single thing around those. I got them figured out, got them strategically systematized, worked them into my routine, and was checking those boxes relatively easily, quickly, way early on in the challenge, the second time through. Excuse me. And then with regard to working out and the diet, the 2 things that I said I have some things I would have done differently around. Let me kind of talk you through them. So with regard to working out, and I kind of touched on this earlier, you got to make sure you get the one workout in before noon. Otherwise, that pressure and that anxiety will start to build throughout the afternoon, and it's going to throw you off. The other things that you need to be doing, like with regard to living your life, are going to be burdened by that subconscious thought about how you need to get 2 workouts in. Like I need to get in an hour and a half of working out. Meanwhile, I have all these calls and still have to be on, and I've got to feed the kids, and I've got to pick up the laundry, and I've got to do these other things. So getting the first one in before most people wake up, before anyone puts you in reaction mode, is critical. Secondly, with regard to workouts, what would I have done differently? What do I wish now I had thought on? And I put a couple of workouts in the hopper knowing that worst case scenario, I go out for a weighted vest run or a walk to get my outdoor workout, and I hop on the Peloton for 45 minutes to get my indoor workout. So if at any time I needed to get an indoor or an outdoor workout in, I had those backups, those standard workouts that I would draw from. Beyond that, with gyms being closed, it's been a little bit challenging to come up with variations of workouts. But it's not that it was impossible, it's that I didn't think outside of the box because there were so many other things that I could have been doing. It's summer at the time of this recording. In Jersey, the weather has been beautiful. Most of my workouts were outside anyway. Something that's suggested as part of this challenge is if you can get both workouts in outside, do it. And I did do a lot of them outside, but I could have been swimming. I wound up having some serious impact issues with my joints because so much of my outdoor running was compounding, and with no rest days, 2 workouts a day on the days that I was doing double runs, without rest, logging 20,000 or close to 20,000 steps on those days, 16, 18, 19, the knees started to really feel it. It would have been nice to have done some swimming and gotten in some lower intensity workouts that still obviously check the box and get you to the next day. But I should have just been more conscious of that and had a more diverse workout strategy as opposed to just those 2 go-tos. Maybe put 3 or 4 go-to workouts in the hopper and be able to draw from those. And then in the meantime, do something different and mix it up as well. I would say I never actually recovered from Murph on Memorial Day. I did Murph. It's a CrossFit workout inclusive of a lot of running and a ton of squatting, all with a weighted vest on. My legs and knees took an absolute beating from that workout, and through the balance of the challenge, I really didn't have time to rest my legs, to get my legs back under me. And so it was very much a test of wills after that, and just hey, you're gonna be sore, your joints are gonna definitely need some rest and recovery at some point, but it was close enough to the end of the challenge where I was able to push through and then take the time off after. And so I took 2 full rest days off after the challenge, but I've gotten back to working out, not twice a day, but back to working out, which is great. So I'll leave you with those 2 things. Just what would I have done differently? Been more strategic about the workouts, had a more diverse set of workouts in the hopper, and definitely get the first one in long before noon, ideally before anybody wakes up, early in the morning, somewhere between 5 and 7, before the world comes at you, before you ever even pick up your phone, look at your Instagram or whatever other, or your emails or whatever the case is. And with regard to the diet piece, 2 things I learned there that I would have done differently is in the final 4 weeks of the challenge, I started incorporating fasts into my diet, and it was something completely unrelated that somebody in my sphere was kind of doing, and was trying to test this modality, this fasting concept, and doing a full 24-hour fast Sunday night into Tuesday morning. And I started doing it 4 weeks out from the finish, and what I realized was not the fasting itself, because I haven't done it long enough to really understand the benefits of it, but just the fact that you don't have to think about food, and it really frees you up. It gives you some added bandwidth to focus on other things, because food and adhering to the diet, if you're not strategic and you're not planning and setting things up on Sunday, will burden you. And it felt nice to have whole days where I didn't have to think about food, because it's just a non-negotiable. You're not eating, you're fasting, that's that. On the days that you're not fasting, if you choose to incorporate a fast, I would have done intermittent rather than just a straight 24 hours, gone intermittent and done the 16 hours off, 8 hours on. But again, this is why we do these things, right? We learn through this process. The other thing, on the days when you're not fasting and you are eating, I would suggest some sort of healthy snacks packed and taken with you if you're on the move. If you're home, especially in the time of quarantine, and there's too much access to the pantry, so you're going to be tempted to grab at things that aren't necessarily healthy for you. So rather than do that, pack things that are. So for me, Sundays was bulk fruit prep day, and fruit doesn't keep for an entire week. So obviously I was doing that throughout the week as well, but I would bulk prep fruit. So if at any time I was tempted to eat anything, if I went to the fridge, I would avoid the pantry altogether. We don't really store much in the pantry to begin with, but I would go to the fridge and there would be individual portions of fruit ready to go. So no excuse for grabbing something other than a healthy snack. And so I would suggest that you guys do that. It's something I would go back and have done way earlier on. I didn't start that practice until maybe a third or half of the way through. And I found myself just struggling to find something healthy to eat on the move, or just skipping a meal in the middle of the day and then just being hungry at night. And so definitely would have done that differently and started from the beginning with that. So having said all that, what are my key takeaways, and why is this a challenge, something that you might want to take on? So first, I alluded to this a little bit earlier, right? There's no way, if you think, or if you're saying things like, I think I want to try this, that you're going to be able to get through this challenge. It requires commitment and stick-to-itiveness that you absolutely have to have before you even embark on this challenge. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. And as you get further in early on, the challenge is tougher until you cross over this threshold, at which point like the determination kicks in, and now you're driving towards the finish line as opposed to working away from the starting gate. So be committed. A key takeaway for me is that my level of commitment, my resolve is strengthened, my discipline muscle is built. Jesse Itzler, who is somebody that Andy talks to a lot and interviews for his Hyper-Hydrate syndicate and on the podcast and stuff, says do hard stuff. Like, in an attempt to strengthen my resolve and my mental toughness and build my discipline muscle, I embarked on this challenge, and I found that I have absolutely done that without a doubt. Like, this is just one more hard thing I've since done and added to my life resume. I also found that I did absolutely stop negotiating with myself. Less at first, but now as the challenge progressed, I became more resolute in my will and my determination. So Ed Milet says, is your will to win for sale? He's actually the co-founder of the Hyper-Hydrate syndicate with Andy Frisella, and they talk a lot about, like, is your will to win for sale? Like, my will is absolutely not for sale. Once committed and determined, I found that there is nothing that will break my will or spirit with regard to any challenge. This is a microcosm of something bigger, but at that day 25 mark for me, things completely shifted and there was no going back. So another piece, and those are two obviously really big things that I'm taking away from this. Another one that I've been working at for a really long time that is now just firm is a morning routine. Earlier I alluded to my desire to form habits, rituals, routines, standards that would get me where I wanted to go. Well, for years I've been talking about getting back to joining the 5 a.m. club, and there was a time where I was capable of getting up at 5 without an alarm at the gym, hitting the workout first thing in the morning, and owning the morning, in turn owning the day, and getting that momentum going, getting the blood flowing early. Well, I'd fallen off for a good bit, and when I took the challenge on, part of it was to just really get habitual about a morning routine, and that absolutely did happen. It took all 75 days for it to really get tight though. And so I started off with that intention in the morning of getting up, getting the photo in, pounding the water, doing the reading. And over the course of the 75 days, that first 15 or so minutes of stuff turned into a full 2.5 hour solid morning routine, inclusive of a workout, breakfast, shower, meditation, journaling, that whole all those practices woven into 1-2.5 hour morning routine that is absolutely ritualistic and standardized, and has been with me through the end of the challenge. And so I took away from this something far more like the physical benefits, and we'll throw the picture up here and I'll show you guys what I looked like at the beginning and at the end, but it really doesn't matter. I lost a pound or two. I look significantly better, but I feel incredibly, just far better mentally, emotionally, than I look physically. Despite being in good shape, I just feel great. So I would encourage anyone that's in a position to take on the challenge, to absolutely go forward and do it. It is a game changer. Something as simple as just the consumption of water and getting ritualistic about taking the water with you everywhere and drinking it and getting the gallon in, and reading and just like expanding, acquiring knowledge, expanding your mind. The workouts, just forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do, seeking discomfort and growing through that discomfort. The benefits are just massive, and I hope that I've been able to articulate that in this video. Like I said, I wanted this to be the most comprehensive and thorough 75 hard recap online. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and many were disjointed. I wanted to work from my outline, and I hope that I did a good job of that. And I was able to bring you value. And if you enjoyed the video, let me know below, comment, and let me know if you've taken on the challenge. What were your key takeaways? I'd love to hear about that. And if you have any questions about anything that I talked about and want me to expand upon, leave that in the comments as well. And I look forward to engaging with you. And as David Goggins would say, stay hard.